on SoTL. This podcast aims to build a culture of scholarship of teaching and learning in higher education, with a specific focus on transitional pedagogy, innovation, and block mode. Scholarship of teaching and learning is more colloquially known as SoTL. In contemporary university environments, good teaching alone is not enough. More and more often, academics are being asked to provide evidence of teaching and learning outcomes. But what does that look like in reality? Sure, it can involve formalised original research, but on the ground level, it involves making transparent how we make learning possible. This involves reflection, inquiry, evaluation, and communication. And that is what we are here to achieve today. My guest today is Kirsty and I from the education team in the first year college, here to talk about what is happening in her classroom and an exciting student-led project, See You at VU. Welcome, Kirsty.
Thanks, Kate, and thanks for the invitation to attend. I've listened to all of your podcasts and I'm always curious to know more about our colleagues and what their area of teaching is. So thanks for having me.
No worries, and I'm sure today people are going to be interested in knowing more about you. So let's start off with, this is always a challenge for academics, but can you start by briefly introducing yourself and what it is that you do?
I'm a teaching-focused academic in the first year college. Interestingly, what a lot of people won't know about me is I started my career, I'm early childhood trained and Montessori trained. So I know all about the little ones, birth to 6, and the importance of the first 6 years of life. So I'm coming at teaching from the same theories, believe it or not. Like, I'm still talking about teaching, whether it's with adults or young children. And I got the good fortune to be able to meet students who are P to 12 course, or they're in the education studies course, or they're in the Bachelor of Early Childhood. So I get to meet a lot of students in the first year, not just from early childhood.
That's amazing. And it would be so nice, to have been in the classroom with the young ones and now be in the classroom with the older ones. And I tell you what, I'm beginning to understand your tolerance very well for all people.
So, yeah, it's about diversity, isn't it? It's about knowing what makes people tick. So I think I'm good at, I suppose, the group work and the games and the team stuff. So anyone who went to kindergarten and had a good experience, it was about learning to cooperate, problem solve, play well with others, and be social and emotional, resilient human beings. So when we talk about it like that, it is no different to being, an educator or an adult in the 21st century. So we still need those skills. We need to know how to problem solve. So children who have a good grounding and education in kinders can do that in the future, in their own life.
That's actually so interesting to see how clearly there's parallels between the early childhood and the higher education. It's really not that different in the end. So you've mentioned to me that you've been involved in a student-led project called See You at VU. Can you tell me a bit about this project?
It's pretty exciting because we all know we've been in Zoom land and been online for 2 years now with the pandemic. And Loretta and John head up a team of students, and it's a student-led project. So it's all of the marketing and the posters and videos and script writing and work that the students are doing to make sure that we're all welcome back onto campus, but predominantly that new students who could be, first time at VU because they have been on Zoom and haven't been onto a campus, have a welcoming message. So there's going to be posters with QR codes, and there's going to be at least 20 languages that are going to be captured in those welcomes. So there's students who have got that area of diversity or specialty with their language other than English, but then also they're on the lookout for other students that want to be involved. So in the first year college, if you hear about the project, there's students from any of our disciplines that have put their hand up, volunteered to be part of this project. And again, it's around teamwork and, leadership. And they're absolutely shining. They are so on track. They're meeting their targets. And it's to, get these welcome messages out there so that we can all come back to campus and see these really innovative and original designed posters that students have created with a welcome message by clicking on using the QR code.
Wow, what a great incentive. And I mean, you've really hit the nail on the head. We're going to have students coming into their third year who have only spent possibly one block on campus ever. So now more than ever, transition and inclusion has to be at the forefront of our minds. And this sounds like a really great initiative. You really focused on the student-led aspect there. Can you talk me more about that component and what supporting roles you, John and Loretta, have to facilitate that?
Yeah, it really is only facilitating because they put their hand up for roles that they wanted to do. So whether it was in the creative aspect of designing the poster, so there might have been a communications team who wanted to do the video recording, and there's also a leadership team. So there's 3 groups of students, and they have their own meetings together in those teams, and then they come together as whole groups. And then on a fortnightly basis, they just touch base with John and Loretta and myself to give us updates of their progress and how they're tracking towards the goal to have all of this ready by December, in addition to doing their own studies and their work outside of, study, and having the busy family lives. And, obviously with just lockdown finishing, like we're talking and doing the podcast in block 3. So, when you're listening to the podcast, we're well and truly would have been out of lockdown. So, yeah, they're all doing things that we would expect graduates to be able to do. And they're the future leaders. They are going to make a difference with whatever discipline they've come from. Yeah, they've got these great skills to take forward when they go out and apply for jobs. They can talk about this project that they've led.
That sounds amazing. And I love the multidisciplinary nature that really focuses on their own strengths. And like you just said, it's such a great thing to be offering these kinds of opportunities to students to make them more employable in the future. The graduate job out market is getting harder and harder, and I think having these opportunities that will allow students to distinguish themselves and evidence projects that they've actually done is really going to give them a huge step forward. And I think we can all learn something from the time management of these students, because I couldn't imagine studying on the block and leading a project and just living life in general. So big kudos.
I know, I'm super proud of them.
So is there anything that the first year college staff could be doing to help support this or be involved in any way?
Well, I think just look out for any emails from the students. If they reach out, they may be asking for assistance if, students in class want to participate and be part of any of the videos. There's certainly, they're connecting and networking with each other really well. There's students at different phases of year 1. So some of the students on the project in early years, or in education, we call them pre-service teachers. So they're not yet teachers. They're beginning to learn about being teachers. So they've certainly connected with other people in their course. Yep. But there's some, as we talked before, there's some really nice cross-germination of ideas and approaches because of the diversity of the courses that the students are in. So, yeah, there's some real standout students there.
That's awesome. You just mentioned videos then. What will the videos involve? Similar messaging like the welcome, or does it going to delve a little bit deeper?
Just because of so many languages that are part of the university, there's going to be probably 20 individual messages, and if their students have time, they'll do more.
Wow.
But what they've looked at is the data and the 20 most predominant languages that students speak, and that'll be the focus. If they have time, they could incorporate more. So the videos will be, somebody who has, come to university and, what are you studying, and, where are you off to now? So it's very much a connected way of, looking at the student as a person, not just at the university. And some of the creative artwork, like there's some sketching and individual thinking there. Like there's, I don't want to sort of spoil too much because there's a lot happening in the creative side of it. But once the posters are up, I'd love the first year college, staff or academics to really know that, it has come from our students. They're the ones that have created these concepts.
That sounds awesome. What a fantastic project. I think we should all be keeping an eye out as we also ourselves transition back to campus. I think that kind of inclusion and that kind of message is not only going to be great for our students, but also back for our staff to remind us what it is going to be like being back on campus, and that we also belong. We have a very diverse staff cohort.
Yes, definitely. It is about belonging, isn't it? It's about, welcoming everyone back and knowing that campus or that location is going to be important for us, for our growth and development.
Absolutely, and that helps me segue really nicely into my next question. Being from an education background and now working within higher education, you would have a wealth of experience in teaching and learning, especially across the spectrum. As we're coming to the end of the year, I certainly can feel the engagement levels are dwindling. I think I've had 20 emails in the last half an hour asking for an extension for tonight. So do you have any advice for staff about some strategies that might get us through to the end? Last block online.
Oh, look, I think activating the learning and being in education, I'm so lucky. I get to teach really units that students can use, John Dewey's hands-on learning by doing approach and the approach of the block model that we use. So, so activating the learning, I've got an acronym called AIM. So A for activate, I for innovate, and sometimes I say inspire, but definitely innovate, and M for motivation. So anything I do, it's not just about, what is the learning? It's about how can I activate, innovate, and motivate the students. And so a lot of that comes down to the games that we play. I'm teaching in the creative arts unit that Michelle Prora designed at the moment. So every session before we start and then after we come back from break, we're playing lots of games, and whether they're drama games or they're, I do a lot of sort of music and, there's just so many opportunities to build it into the unit when we're talking about a creative arts space. But I understand not everyone has that opportunity when it comes to science or any other areas that you think, how am I going to really make this inclusive where students want to, get involved and do things. And on Zoom, the emotional investment is not always as high. So I do a lot of things where I ask open-ended questions, but I also do sentence prompts and sentence starters to gauge how students are feeling. So it could be as easy as going around and asking a question like, today I feel, and they have one word to complete that sentence. And if students don't want to participate, they can say pass. And so I look at wellbeing. I look at how to incorporate the wellbeing into every aspect of the learning. So not everyone has to participate, and I talk about there being spectators. This might be not the way everyone would look at teaching and think that every student needs to participate, but it's about building trust and the capacity to be able to even, get to the stage where you can turn your camera on and give an actual thumbs up rather than an emoji on the screen. So I do lots of these sentence prompts and also intrinsic motivation. So you can't underestimate that I get to every day, every session, make my practice transparent because the students in the education course are going to be future teachers. I really unpack and say, why I'm doing what I'm doing.
It makes so much sense. It's like, and if something's a total bust, you can be like, all right, well, this is a teaching moment. I'm going to explain what this is.
That's right, teachable moments. And I really do express that so that the students can see why I did what I did. So I deliberately give long pauses. And I say, I'm giving a long pause because I'm waiting. There might be someone who wants to contribute. And if I rush, I'm not giving you an opportunity to say or to answer or participate in the way you want to. But also the intrinsic motivation is that linked to their future career is that if this happens to you, how would you overcome it? And so, there's opportunities where, we can talk about our practice and how to overcome these things because they're going to be in my shoes teaching in the future. So education does lend itself to that, talking about, what are the obstacles and how we overcome those. And I ask them to reflect and I ask them to give feedback, and we spend time talking about what good feedback looks like. And I'm open to feedback too, so that I can improve my practice. And I will say to students, did that work, or was that a flop? Tell me, be honest with me. And laughter is honestly the best thing, because when you all laugh, you're all in sync together. So you can actually turn it around. So what didn't work, you can actually laugh and talk about, okay, so in future, I'm going to reflect on this, and this is how I think I'll approach that. So we do that in education, and we're always reflecting and what we can do better.
It's actually really interesting listening to you talk about your teaching strategies, because I'm seeing a lot of parallels in what I do within the health space. And I think in some ways, it's obviously there are some connections between education and health, but in others there's quite large differences. And just when you were saying that thing about having the long pause and giving students the opportunity, I teach clinical skills units, and I actually use the long pause to get them to experience what it's going to be like with a client, and actually developing that comfort with silence, because if you are silent, invariably the other person will fill it. And I use that as a teachable moment in the classroom, where I'll sit there and almost make the silent uncomfortable, so a student says something because they feel bad. But then we unpack what that would mean in a clinical session, and they actually start to see the value where if you don't talk, it opens up the floor and it encourages other people to participate. And it ties in with what you were just saying about how it's actually okay for a student to be a spectator and to evolve into an active participant, because they're all coming from different backgrounds and with different confidence levels and different capital. And sometimes allowing a student time to build that trust is actually going to end up with deeper outcomes by the end than having that forced participation, at least I've found in my experience.
Yes, and what you're explaining there is the way that we are making our teaching transparent, so that we then unpack what that looked like and why we were doing that. And it's those moments, those experiences, that I really think that's where the feedback is, that is important from students, where I know to keep doing that, because they say, I really liked that you gave me practical examples and you talked about teaching. So it wasn't just about let's look at the theory, we're actually matching our praxis or practice to the theory. So something we talk a lot about in education is describing what you're doing, and then reflecting on it, and then changing your practice. So you've really got to always be evolving as an educator. I think the students who maybe come in too as brand new students, we get to know them, I find, better on Zoom, because we're face-to-face. I can put a name to a face really quickly. And I do play games where this is as simple as saying, let's do not just the fist of five from Avid, but let's use our fingers and hold up how many units you've already completed. So a fist is the first one finger up if you've completed one unit. And then some of them might be putting up 10 fingers, or, we get a bit funny with it all and go, oh my gosh, you're actually, you're not so much a year one. There's students that might be coming back to do a unit from another year. So I can match up new students with experienced students. So some of that grouping, the way we group students as well, that's another sort of key to the success of, helping students to develop their practice for themselves for future. So, some of those examples are good, aren't they, where you can lead by example, model what you want the students to do. And I have to say, a lot of my secret comes from Sue Roffey, who I've never met, but she has a fantastic book called Circle Time Solutions for Student Wellbeing.
Okay.
I've got that earmarked, like I use a lot of her activities. What she's done is gather activities from all over the place, and it's just in one book. So if you get an opportunity, the library has a hard copy of that book. So Circle Time Solutions for Student Wellbeing by Sue Roffey.
Beautiful. I'll put a link to that book in the description, so anybody who's listening to the podcast, you can have easy access to it. So that sounds brilliant. And I think that's such a really powerful technique that you can do quickly that gives you such a wealth of knowledge. And I think sometimes we get caught up in that student engagement has to be a big activity or a huge time investment, when really we can actually gather really valuable information about our students super quickly that will allow us to meet the needs of our diverse classrooms. Because I definitely know I'm guilty of this, where you just assume because it's first semester and you're in the first year college that everybody is fairly new, and then you have that person come up and, like you said, they're a third year or a second year and they've come back, and you kind of like, okay, well, now I can help to extend that person. And I'm, while everybody else might be doing a really basic referencing activity, once they finish it, you can have kind of things on the sidelines to help push those students or empower them to mentor the other students and share their experiences that way.
And I'd like to add to that too, because it's like we know where they are right now, but where have they come from?
Yes.
And where are they going?
Yes.
And our students really enjoy that, I find, when I ask them, so where are you off to next? What unit are you going into? And I can, help them to see that, they know where they're sort of headed, but not quite. They need to know what that course map looks like for them in year one. So, it's good and reassuring for them, I think, helping them with that transition.
And I think that's so important. We focus so much on the transition to university, especially in our Block 1 units that have been so carefully curated. But I think sometimes we forget about the importance of the transition through the first year, and how we almost need to be explicit in linking those course units together, because while the block is fantastic for so many reasons, it's so important that we help our students realize that once a unit is completed, it's not gone, and it's going to help inform how you understand and experience your next units. And I think it's really important that we as staff have a good understanding of our diverse courses and our diverse classrooms, so we can assist in making the implicit explicit for our students and kind of creating that first year experience rather than just getting them into uni.
That's right. It's everyone's job, isn't it? It's all of our job to make sure that they know that, again, back to what we were talking about before, they belong, they're important and valued, and what better way to do that and explain that by, just giving them that guidance of, where they're off to next, and knowing that it's always hard for me to say goodbye at the end of the block, but I know they're going to be in good hands. And I always ask them, who's your tutor? And, choose different tutors. And they say, maybe they want to come back into my class, and I'll say, no, you need to try different tutors, because that's how you build your teaching repertoire.
Yep.
You need to be able to, model and take on board those sort of characteristics of people that you like what they're doing, and how they do it.
Definitely. And I'm really fortunate in my position. I kind of get a bit of a sandwich in that I have 2 units, and one is one of the first units that they do, and the other is one of the very last units that they do. And so
that'd be cool.
It's awesome, because you see all these names coming back, but then you actually start to get to see the growth that's occurred, and you're like, yes, good work, you little chicken nuggets. Like you've come so far, and it's a really nice thing, because sometimes when they're in it, they don't actually see the progress in the same way. But when because I've had time apart from them, can point out and say, no, like, remember when you were doing this? Like, look, even though, they might be overwhelmed or stressed, you can really show them where they are now compared to where they were, and try and pull them out of their own heads a little bit, so they can see that growth as well.
And this is important then, not just for their studies, but for employment. And what's happening in the early childhood space at the moment is the Department of Education and Training, they have $25,000 scholarships, because it's amazing. Most of our students are coming in with scholarships or applying once they're in the course. And what the government have done is they've said that every 3-year-old in Australia needs 15 hours of kinder before they go to 15 hours of 4-year-old kinder. So they're talking about really changing the quality, saying we need quality education in the 2 years before children go to school.
Yep.
And there's a whole recruitment drive at the moment. So potentially anyone with a degree, an existing degree, could come in and do some further studies in the early childhood space, not in the first year, but go on and do a master's or a graduate diploma, at Victoria University, of course, and
Shameless
they
plug.
could be out there teaching in. Yes, a good plug. Teaching in the early years because it's being rolled out over the next 10 years. They started in 5 municipalities in 2020, and then it extended this year. So in the next 8 years, every 3-year-old will have 15 hours of kinder. So there's jobs
That's
out there in the
amazing.
early years. Yeah, so there's an exciting time. So we do talk about employment because the fact that they can see where they're headed. They know that there's jobs out there. It's a really good time to be, talking and I suppose that enthusiasm and that excitement about their degree to know that they're headed somewhere good.
That's amazing. Well, I think after just having a bit of a positive experience moment here.
Yes.
So Kirsty, as this is the final podcast for the year, I thought we'd round out with a quick game of high-low. I'm inspired by your engagement strategies, and I'm going to use one of my very poor ones, where here we can talk about what one of our highs of the years were, as well as a low we have faced, because I think sometimes we're so faced with a world that we think we have to be positive all the time, and it's important to acknowledge the lows, because the lows are what allow us to grow and the highs are what inspire us. So I thought we could take it in turns. We'll start with the lows and then ends with the highs. So
I was going to say that too. Let's start with the lows and finish on the highs.
So give me a low of your teaching experience recently.
Oh, okay. I'm going to say missing the hallway conversations. When you just have incidental hallway conversations where you pass someone on the way to the photocopier or to go and heat up your lunch, and then something amazing comes from that little spark or that conversation, and just even being in contact. I've missed a lot of our colleagues. So I'm going to say those incidental hallway chats. That's my low.
Absolutely. Yeah, mine is actually going to be fairly similar along those lines. I was going to say always having to formalize everything. You can't just have a quick research meeting, or you can't quickly show someone something on your space who's at the printer that's next to your office or something like that. It has to be a formal email, and then it has to be a calendar invite. And I don't know about you, but I always feel more pressure when I receive a calendar invite that I should be prepping something or I should be performing something, and it should last more than 5 minutes, even though realistically I only have a 5-minute question that I want to share.
Yeah, and it goes back to that start where I talked about aim and innovate. So how do you innovate without a creative space to do that? So if it is always formalised, it doesn't lend itself to maybe these potentials to be innovative. So
no, and it takes away so much of it takes away so much of the spontaneity. I think some of the best ideas come from, where you're chatting to someone and then they walk away and then they come back to your office and they're like, actually, what about this? And you're like, yes. But you're not going to...
I know.
I know for me...
I can't stop smiling, and no one can tell on the podcast, but I'm just so excited about that because, yes, you're right. You've got something there. Something can have that momentum and keep going and become something bigger and better.
Yes, and I definitely know I never send the follow-up calendar invite 5 minutes after the meeting when I have a great idea saying, hey, would you like to meet again? I've put some thought into this and I got a new idea. I feel like a lot of those ideas have not necessarily come to fruition, more out of social awkwardness and trying to navigate the rules of that world.
Yes, and knowing that everybody is probably busy too, because you do have to, just be so, just ready for everything that you're doing on Zoom. Whereas, the spontaneity is even... I know, I'm just thinking now off the top of my head, sometimes when someone comes past a classroom and I say, come on in, come and see what the students are presenting. I've done that where it's great that students get someone else to see what they're doing. It's, that spontaneity. No, that'll be good to get back to.
Definitely. And what's your high, Kirsty?
Oh, I actually got a few. I'm going to start with pets. I don't know about you, but...
Oh, my God, I love seeing their pets.
Yes, have you seen everyone's pets? So the students have pets, and this is something where I talk about when I talk about literacy, when I get to teach literacy. It's called funds of knowledge. So we know more about our learners when we get to know more about who they are. And pets is such an important part of that, knowing the human side of our students. And I've got twins, they're pugs called Rory and Lola. So my students know Rory and Lola.
I have twins too.
You do? Who are your twins? What are they called?
My twins are Nova and Pixel, and they are cats. And I think anyone who's had a meeting with me in the last 2 years has met one of them at least. And I'm sure that they've contributed to an improvement in SET scores.
Yes, everyone loves that. Isn't it good? So let's start a movement. Bring your pet to work day. I do have another one.
Go.
You probably have got more.
Yes, I've got a real one.
I've got a work one too. I had the opportunity to design 2 new units this year. Ooh. And I'm going to do a shout out to the design and development team, because the connected learning staff, I really got to, I love collaborating, and I got to do that. And I'm proud of the units that we delivered to the students. So
That's awesome.
2 new units, and that was a high for me. So personal high. Yeah.
I love that. My high is going to be, and I think it's going to be a little bit controversial, because I think there's going to be people within the first year college that disagree with this. But this year and last year, I found, and I'm sure most of us have found, that we've had to do a lot more pastoral care with our students. Lots more emails, lots more conversations out of hours and things like that, because you don't have the organic sense of having a student just stay back after class and ask a question. And this kind of ties in with what you were saying about pets, but I feel like I've actually got to know all my students on a deeper level, and also more equally than I do in the classroom, because in the classroom, quite often you really get to know those extroverted students who are really confident in themselves and happy to put themselves out there, but you quite often get the more introverted ones who may be less academically confident or less socially confident, and you've got to make an effort to go and talk, but you're still kind of confined by the barriers of teaching in a classroom of 30, whereas I've actually really enjoyed doing all that one-on-one support, because I've really feel like I've got to know all of my students really well, and I've actually been able to give them personalized feedback that fits within where they are, without them necessarily being able to compare themselves to other people, because they can't see what other people are doing like you can in a face-to-face classroom. So that's actually something that I'm trying to figure out how to capture.
And because what's happening in a classroom, if someone stays back, there might be other students waiting to stay back. And so they're sort of nearby. It's not really that one-to-one, whereas Zoom, I have given and had students, be really, really asking for feedback, but also, appreciative of me letting them know what their strengths are, and that that this is what I like about what they're doing. So, it could be something to build on, like it's almost like we're having these one-to-one meetings that would happen, like when we go back to talking about education, this would happen in a primary school or a secondary school, where you would have scheduled one-to-one, feedback sessions, and, have the opportunity for them to reflect and build on that, and talk about where they're headed. So, I think you're onto something there. Yes.
And I'm not sure what the logistics of it would be, but it's something that I'm definitely going to be pondering over the summer, how to try and capture that within a classroom.
Well, I think assessment always works. Giving some marks to it, then students value it more so.
Yes.
And it's, finding... knowing, and because it works in Zoom, because we know our students, we do, but face-to-face, they don't always let you in, because they have maybe that facade, like that protective layer of, I'm okay, everything's all right, I'm going through the routine. But, there's a lot more sharing that happens on Zoom, I believe, in the classes that I've had.
Absolutely. And so everybody, I guess this is your call to action. If you want to be part of any of these great initiatives that Kirsty and I are going to be putting forward in the coming months, whether it's bring your pet to school or trying to build that sense of equality and one-on-one relationship within the classroom, I think these are all great conversations, and I'd love to hear the thoughts of other people out there. So feel free to send Kirsty and I.
And it really is the conversation that has brought this forward, like having the opportunity to have this conversation. Thank you, because who would have known? Like, it's almost like I don't know, it was a little bit of a thing I hadn't said to anyone, and now it's out there about the whole way we dress and the things that we do. I don't know, it must be something obviously other people have experienced too. So we'll keep the conversation going.
And that's it. If you don't have the conversation, then you never know. So you've just got to put it out there and see what sticks.
Yes. Thanks, Kate. I've really enjoyed this time. Thank you for having a chat with me and giving me an opportunity to be part of the podcast.
No worries. Thank you so much for agreeing. So everyone, that's going to round out the podcast for 2021. If you like it and I have enough time, I will see you in 2022. But, give me your feedback. If you hate it, we can certainly let it crumble and make it a COVID-only thing. But let's see how we go. So, Kirsty, thank you so much for coming along. I hope you all have a great block 4. Enjoy the last block of teaching and hopefully the last block of online. And we'll see you back on campus.
Yeah, see you soon.
Bye.